Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAlanRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, AlanRoberts.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. Happy Monday night. It is August 30th. Tomorrow, do you believe it? Tomorrow's already the last day of August. Officially, if you're a parent, that's the last day of summer. That means kids are going back to school. Ellery went back today because of all the new COVID restrictions and stuff. Ellery, my kindergartner, now turned first grader. She went today. Now she's home tomorrow, but the other two go to fourth grade and sixth grade, and then they all go back on Wednesday. So Wednesday's the first day with no children at home because it's the end of summer. And by the way, I'm Scotty Roberts. I'm your host of this show. This is the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Go on over and see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. Find out the schedule, all the different shows they play, and all the different times where you can hear repeats of this show playing on that network. And, of course, if you're here, you know you're at the YouTube channel. But the YouTube is where we do the video simulcast, not rebroadcast. I was going to say rebroadcast again. The simulcast of this show in video where I can see you. Well, no, I can't. I can see if you're in the chat room. You can see me. And that's at Mr. Scotty Roberts. That's youtube.com/Mr. all spelled out, Scotty Roberts. And if you're not a member of this channel, hit the little join button below the window, and you too can become a member of this channel. And so thank you all for being here. I'm seeing everybody's piling up over there in the chat room one by one. We got Barbie D. Barbie D, you've been early a lot these days. You're getting the good seats. Now, what's the good seat for you at the theater? Down front, where everything is elongated when you look up, off to the side, near an exit. I personally, by the way, when I go to a movie theater, I like to sit back at least 3/4 of the way back and right down the middle. And so I want that screen, that big screen, to be right out in front of me. And so Barbie D has the good seats. Welcome tonight, Barbie D. Elderberry, good to see you as well. I'm looking over here at all the, let's move to the closer chat room. We got Elderberry is here. Sean Stroik is here. Good to see you, brother. And Morgan Snow, nice to see you early on in the show. And Sean, by the way, says hi to all me and all the Intrepids. And so welcome, everybody. I'm glad that you're all Intrepids. And spread the word. If you like being an Intrepid, let people know about it. And Elderberry, I did see you when I said hi already. We got Morgan. There's Master Finn. Good to see you in the chat room, brother. Glad you're here. Matthew Sainsbury. Good to see you. Buffering a bit tonight, he says. It's not on my end, so hopefully it's not a universal problem tonight. But you never know. You're way down there in South America, so, you know, the transmission's got to go through the storms. So maybe you're picking up a little buffering problem. If you're having buffering problems, with this video, just let me know in the chat room. And who else we got? We got Michelle Kenham Free. Good to see you, Michelle. I love your posts, by the way, and your pictures when you put them up. Nice stuff. I appreciate that every day. And we got Steel Rundle out in Steeler territory. So good to see you, brother. What's going on with me? You're seeing it. This is about as good as it gets. And Patricia Miller. I think you pronounce it Miller or Milia. Malia. Patricia, good to see you. If I have seen you before, it has slipped my mind. So welcome if this is your first time, or at least your first time coming into the chat room. If it's not, pardon me, because I don't know everything. I miss things sometimes. And let's see. The show must have technical difficulties tonight. Anybody having technical difficulties other than Matthew Sainsbury tonight? It could be Matthew because you're down in South America. Hopefully the broadcast is coming along just fine for everybody. If you're having problems, Matthew, why don't you try rebooting it? It might help the stream on your end. Let's see. What does Sean Bowden have to say? Welcome, Sean. I'm pissed off today. A young man was one of the 12 Marines. Our president disrespected yesterday. Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of that. And I'm hearing a lot of things about those 12 guys. So if we can extend our, it doesn't do much from afar. But if you can let people know, I put up the USMC symbol with the black bow on it. It was just to signify we had a great loss of life. And it's something that shouldn't have happened. These young men, this should not have happened. But of course, you have to realize, too, that soldiers, when they join the military, those soldiers are, they can woo you in with great school opportunities, educational opportunities, travel and learn a skill and all of that. That's great. But when you have, I just saw Matt Finn's, I can't quit you. When you have wartime or you have actions, that's what the military does. They are there to stand in the gap for us. And some people might say this is senseless. Yes, these guys died in a way that they shouldn't have had to die. That should not have happened. They should have all been gone before that happened. And we all know some of the details of that and how that all is. So it's a needless loss of life. And I will tell you, I don't blame President Joe solely for that. Because Joe isn't making those decisions. Joe can't even decide who to call on. I saw a thing and I posted it on my Facebook today from yesterday during a brief press conference. He said he was going to make some statements, but he couldn't call on anybody because he'd been told he couldn't call on anybody. And my comment is, who told the president of the United States he can't talk to anybody? And Joe Biden probably shouldn't have said that publicly if he was to keep that a bit secret. But he went up there and they were all chomping at the bit when he said, I've been told I can't take any questions today. Well, are you the president or are you somebody's lapdog? Is the first thing I want to say. How do you think the former president would have acted if somebody told him you can't take any questions today? Like hell I can't. So I have a problem with that. I have a problem with our president because he shouldn't be the president. Take all the questions of elections and stuff like that out of it. This is a man that should never have been elected to office. He's not in a condition to be be the leader of the free world. And I don't blame him. I blame the people that pushed him into it, that talked his wife into it. There's got to be some huge payoff coming for somebody. And I don't think it's as simple as like a backroom bribe, but I think that there's probably a huge payoff in here somewhere. of some kind. I don't think Joe should have even run for president. His time was done. He was already starting to slip before that. Joe should have retired, but I don't think he was there enough to make that decision. So I blame the people around him. Brianna Learman said, I'd be livid. He should be able to talk about this if he wants to be serious about being a president. Yeah, exactly, Brianna. That's exactly it. I don't think he knows what he wants to be serious about. He's probably got some ideas. He's not totally gone, but I don't think he's calling any of the shots. I don't think he's making any of the decisions. I think he's being told what the decisions are that he's making. And like I've said before about Joe Biden, I said this during the election, the campaign. I said, Joe Biden's done his time. Whether you agree with him or not, Joe Biden was the vice president of the United States, whether you liked him or not, or agreed with his political ideologies or not. But Joe Biden did his time. It was time for Joe to retire. And frankly, I think the death of his son, Beau, hit him very hard. And they say, by the way, that dementia has a way of increasing when you have great emotional trauma like that. And I think we started to see him slip then. And I believe Joe should have retired and gone fishing. And he'd probably be a much happier man right now. But he was dragged back in. And I think pushed into the presidency, told this will be good for your country and this will be good. And, you'll be a symbol of everything that we want to have done. And I don't think, and as you can see, as time is going on, he's getting worse and worse. So I don't blame him much. I don't think he's making any of the decisions. And you don't see anybody countering that claim out there. So, hey, Dave Potter, Uncle Dave, good to see you. And let's see. What else we got? Delaney Pearl Jones, you got here. Good to see you. And that's all I'm going to say, by the way, about politics, about Joe Biden. I think if you're a praying person, pray for Joe Biden. He's being used and manipulated by a contingency. The people that are governing the narrative right now. And I think people, because of what happened in Afghanistan, people are starting to wake up to it. They are. I think people are already awake to it. They just denied it. They turned their back on it. Because they got the evil orange man out of office. But I dare say that you wouldn't have seen what happened in Afghanistan happen under a Trump administration. And JB is a vampire. He's not human, says Delaney Pearl Jones. I think he's human. Delaney, and I know you're being a bit tongue-in-cheek. I hope you are. I think he's a human, and his frailty is showing all too clearly. Unless it's a big act, and I don't think it's an act. So, Brianna says, it makes me sick to my stomach because I have multiple friends and family who are active in the military. He really should have just stepped away, and, damn well, he just reads whatever they give. Well, that's it. I don't have permission to answer questions today. Well, who's giving you permission, Joe? I've got family members, too, that are stationed very near all of that right now. So I know what that's like and what it's all about. So Sean B., a baby I held 20 years ago, came home in a casket yesterday, said Sean Bowden. And our president didn't even salute him. I feel that with you, brother. All right. Let's move along. I was going to talk about some things, and I'll still talk about them. I wasn't going to talk about this all night. So I have a bit of good news. Remember how I said a few months ago that I had been writing on the 10 breaths of Ra? And it's just sitting right here, so I'm going to mention this. And this is this novel that I'm trying to finish for my agent. It takes place in 1920s Egypt. It's an occult detective story mixed in with all the supernatural and all the mummies and the weird stuff and the mysticism and Egyptian mythology all wrapped into it. And I had written many pages of this book, a couple of chapters worth, and somewhere along the way lost the file. When I got this big computer right here, and I transferred everything over, somewhere along the way, that file got lost or corrupted and just disappeared. I didn't have it on any discs. I thought I had sent copies of it to my agent to review, and it was gone. Nobody had a copy of it until just the other day. We were looking for something. And I'm going to tell you something right here. Did you see in my hands right here? I actually made a printout of it. And this is all two-sided. I had made a printout of all that stuff. And you know what? I found it in a drawer mixed in with my artwork. This isn't the file. This is a printout I had done. So I could sit down and read it and review it when I wasn't sitting at my computer. So I got it all right here. Now, it's not typewritten. It's not in a file. So I'm going to have to go back in and retype some of it. But at least I've got it now. So that's good to know. There was some pretty cool stuff in there. And I thought, oh, it's gone forever. You can rewrite. If you're a writer, you can rewrite it. You can recreate things. But it's never quite the same because you feel like I put out pretty good. So there you go. Matthew Sainsbury says, this is the longest time I've seen Scotty this late. Really? I'm here every night. Matthew, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I've missed your meaning on that. So I'm glad you're here, though. Barbie D says, no, I was not born in the 20s. Me either. My kids think I was. Yeah, Joe Biden looked at his watch, Sean Bowden. You're right. I saw that. And it was disgusting as far as I'm concerned. But see, I don't think he's cognitively tuning it out. I think he just doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I said, and I didn't mean this flippantly. I wonder if he's been told, hey, you know, you are on certain, I'll bet they have to pump him up a little bit. There are certain medications you can take that help that cogency come back for a time. Where they were talking about it when he was doing debates with Trump. And I think he's looking at his watch. He looked at his watch a lot through the debates, too, if you remember that. I think he looks at his watch to see how much time do I have before I'm supposed to be stepping off this stage. I wonder if that's part of it. So there you go. Hey, Lucky Stone. Good to see you. So, what did I see? Brianna's saying, no, not until the new house is unpacked. Blah, 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 blah. Had to be something about that. Well, we're in the middle of moving this week. And I want to thank publicly John and Brianna Learman. Brianna's in the chat room now. They've been so helpful to us and are still going to be for the next few days. And so it's great. And we've been taking loads over into the garage because we can't quite get into the house yet. This afternoon, they were cleaning carpets and things and cleaning up. The final thing, we met the old people who lived there, and they were doing some cleaning up, and they were like, hey, this is great. Nice to meet you. They were very nice people. Oh, Lucky Stone. You just distracted me with that one. My liberal Democrat friends firmly believe President Biden is fully competent. It drives me crazy. I've got to believe, Lucky, that that's denial. It's overt denial. They know he is not competent. So, thank you, Esoteric Crafter. I'm not quite sure who you are, but I don't know if I know you or not by name. But thank you for that. Yeah, we're in the process of moving right now. We're out of this place in roughly a week. We told them we'd be out by the end of the second weekend. or actually be the first weekend, or the 4th through the 6th, and out of this place. So Dave Potter says, same thing happened to my book of poetry that you and I'd been working on. All paginated, almost all of the artwork done. Just had 2 chapters to lace in. The entire file missing. So yeah, I've had a couple of discs go bad, and I've lost a lot of information. Sean says, my 46-year-old ass wants to join the military to protect my country. I would join the military to protect my country in a heartbeat at 60. My only problem is I know I've got physical limitations right now. And I was talking with Brianna sitting on the front porch within the last hour here, talking about physical limitations. It's like body doesn't respond the way it used to. Some of that's my own damn fault. If I'd been a health nut and had kept exercising the way I should have, eating the right foods and all of that, well, maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. But I could shoot. That's for sure. I could strategize. That's for sure. Could I get out there and run in the fight? It'd be tough on me right now. I'd have to get in pretty good shape to do that. So, well, maybe 11 weeks in boot camp would help. So, yeah, Lucky Stone says they always get to Trump, blah, blah, blah. I stop and say, Trump is no longer president. You know what? Joe Biden's president, right? Okay, you can take it from there. How come I only ever see when pardon me, Democrats, if you're out there, it only ever seems to me that when I see a Democrat get into the office, they spend the first 3.5 years blaming the former president for everything that's going on. So, what happened to Eisenhower's The Buck Stops Here? Or Truman's The Buck Stops Here? I know he's before your time. Truman is as much before my time as Reagan is before like John and Brianna's time. I forget because we're all equals. We're all friends. I forget they're the same age as my oldest kids. And if John's listening, my twin daughters, Abby and Bryn. That's a thing we do. Because I said that too much. My twin daughters, Abby and Bryn. He goes, I know who they are by now. So Ryan Gale says every president blames the predecessor. I don't recall a lot of that. From what I think happens? I think you get the followers of those presidents blame people more than the presidents themselves. I know, like when Trump got into office, I didn't see him in much blaming as saying, all this stuff from the past, it's not working. We got to make some changes. So anyway, and you're welcome to whatever belief you want, Ryan. This is not a political show, so we're not going to camp on that. So the esoteric crafter says Truman was a great president, but he wasn't part of the establishment. That's right. So the establishment is the problem. And Dave Potter says doing curls should involve beer and ice cream. Not necessarily together, but those two things, that's not doing curls. Ice cream. Oh, I shouldn't do that on air, huh? You're watching? That could look really bad. Bad form. So, Sean Bowden says, I'm willing to give my life to protect fellow Americans. And I hear you, Sean. I'd rather give my life and continue my life to help fellow Americans. But I think if it came down to it, it's like saying I would give my life for my family. Yeah, I would. Not that I want to die, but I'd want to protect them. I get exactly where you're coming from. Yeah, the military, I think 35 or 36, or is it 30, even 34, you can't go in. So I'm 26 years too late. I was in the United States Marine Corps, as you all know. And back when I was 22, I signed up for 6 years. And I was on my way to officer training, and I broke part of my back, a bone in my back. And I was not given the option. I was given the medical discharge. And so that happened. And I've told stories about that. If you haven't heard this story, you can stop me. And I won't stop because I'll tell it for people who haven't heard it. By the way, talking about protecting my family, remember I almost had to do that with Janine. Oh, yeah. We had a wild neighbor, Brianna and John, that she lived right next door to them. And she came over across the street knocking on our door. So anyway, I had the one story I told you where, and if you haven't heard this, it's new to you. If you've heard it, bear with me again. I was at an event, paranormal event. No, it was a horror movie producers event. And 10 years ago, 2010, I went with Nikki Jones. You may see her as a friend of my book. They're independent filmmakers. And she's the one who did the History Trippers trailer, by the way. If you go to my website, scottallenroberts.com, I got a fly in here, and it's bugging the shit out of me. You go to my website, and you can watch the trailer with John Ward and me, if you haven't seen it. But she did that trailer for us. Anyway, I was at a movie event, producers event with her, and I was sitting in the bar of the hotel, and there was a skinny kid. I know I told you this story. It feels like I just told this recently. Was sitting at the bar next to me. He had a Wrangler shirt on, plaid, snap front cowboy shirt, and blue jeans and cowboy boots, and a hat that was way too big for him. He talked like this, And there was a point where I could see, and then he had a military haircut. And we got to talking, and I said, Marine Corps? And he said, yes, sir, as they all say after boot camp. And we got to talking about that, and he asked if I had ever served, and I said, well, I was in the Marines myself. And I said, I never quite made it to being a Marine, though. And I told him the story. I signed up for 6 years to be an officer, and they brought me in at a certain level, which was higher than others because I'd had an education already. I was 22. And I told him I broke I just say it for ease. I say broke my back, a bone in my back. And I was medically discharged. I was going to go in, I was going to be F-14. That dates me a little bit. This was 1983 when I was in the military. I was going to fly F-14 jets. I was going to be a navigator and a jet pilot for the Marine Corps. And so I said, obviously, here's what happened. I said, I never quite made it across the line. And he said, oh, man. He says, and he stuck out a hand to me and shook my hand. He says, in my book, he says, you're still a Marine. You put your name on the line. You signed up. You signed up for 6 years. You were going to be an officer, somebody I'd have to say sir to. And he said, I respect that. And then, conversation trailed off, and he walked away a few minutes later. And about 5-10 minutes later, I get a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around. It's this guy, and there's 4 other guys with him. So there's 5 of them, all dressed very similarly, cowboy hats and the snap Wrangler shirts and blue jeans. And they're all Marines. And I thought, uh-oh, what did I do? And they stood there in a line in front of me while I'm sitting at the bar. And they took a step back, and they said, this is for you, sir. And they all went, and they all gave me the salute. And I tell you, it brought tears to my eyes. And they said, you may not have been able to stay in, but you signed up to do it. And he said, we have a lot of respect for you. Thank you for your service, they said to me. And I'd only served a few months when you think about it. So there it is. That's my story about that. I know I told it before, and some of you have heard it before, but there it is. That's a good memory. So Sean Bowden said, yeah, one of the Marines who lost his life Thursday was a kid I knew. Yeah, that's sad. That's even tougher when it's somebody you know. So Rainey's brother, who she never knew growing up, he was a half brother, and it was different families and so on. I think he'd been adopted by that family, if I'm not mistaken. He was in the Army. And Dave Potter, you might remember when this all happened. We were living in the Larpenter house at the time. Just a mental note for Dave. And no, we were in the Bloomington house, the big house, the fireplace, the haunted house. And Rainey got word that her brother died from wounds he received in Iraq. And he was one of those guys. He was a young man, 22 or 23 years old. I don't know how old he was, but if you do the math, he was on his 4th deployment back to Iraq. Combat deployment, his 4th deployment. And he was a very young man. And he had, if not prophetically, tattooed on his back, I don't know if it was 2 angel wings. It was something like that. But the Bible verse that says, no greater love than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. And in his final tour, that 4th tour, they got hit by an I didn't want to say IUD. You know what I'm talking about. A bomb. And it blew up their vehicle. He lost, I think, an arm and a leg and had other damage done. He was in the hospital. IED. Yeah. Sorry about that. Slightly slanted sleuth. Thank you for correcting me. I'm not Joe Biden. My mind is not going. My brain is tired tonight. Sorry. IUD is to prevent pregnancies. That's where it crossed in my head. So he was in the hospital. He was doing better. And then he died. Cardiac arrest, complications to all his wounds. And so we went to the funeral. Rainey met his parents, and I don't think she's seen them ever since. His last name was Benson, I think. But a young man who gave his life. He did 4 combat tours voluntarily and lost his life in defense of his country, is the way he saw it. And we kind of relate that one incident that took place with us when I told you about one of the ghost stories that Rainey and I have when we had all the blankets ripped off of our bed in the middle of the night. I mean, it was an instant. They didn't just fall off the bed. They got ripped off of us. And looked at the clock when that happened. It was 4:44 a.m. And I didn't know this at the time, but somebody said that's the number of angels. Now, I don't believe when you die you become an angel. I don't know where that ever came from. But this was the same not long after he died. And Rainey sometimes wonder, was that my brother for some reason? So, and it's a brother she never knew and never grew up with, but it was very moving to be there. So there you go. Thank you, young soldier. Yep. There it is, slightly slanted sleuth. There it is. Somebody who will never see 30. Somebody who never will have children. But he's got people who remember him. So there we are. Sean Stroik says it doesn't bring good memories for me. I'm sorry, brother. Did you serve in Iraq? I'm curious. Did you serve? Were you deployed in combat? I'm just curious if that's what you're referring to. So, if you said it earlier, sorry about that. I missed it in the chat room. So, I didn't quite catch that, sleuth. You become an angel if you die before you die. So when you die, you don't die. Okay. I'm not sure I follow the logic on that. Maybe there's a theology to that. You'll have to tell me about it. So there you go. You know, when we were talking about Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ, the whole purpose of this particular series, which you can see we're chiseling away very slowly at it, because we talk about other things here as well, or I have interruptions, familial interruptions. Rainey is off doing 2 massages an hour drive from here. She won't even be done till about 10 o'clock, and then she's got to drive back. So she won't be home till about 11 o'clock tonight. And the 3 kids, I'm surprised, knock on wood, I'm surprised that I haven't had a single interruption tonight. Does that surprise you, Brianna? John? Surprises the hell out of me. Dave? So I sent them up. They had school tomorrow. I sent them upstairs and said, girls, you can lay in your bed, watch TV, and get your clothes ready for tomorrow. And Flynn, I told him, take a shower, get your clothes ready. Haven't heard a peep out of any of them since I walked in here. The door of the studio is hanging wide open. So that's been a good thing, knock on wood. But I don't even know why I brought up why Rainey isn't here. My mind's disconnecting. But this series, the reason we're talking about it at all, this Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ, the idea was to talk about the subtitle of this guy's book, Derek Murphy. And the subtitle is The Fascinating Parallels Between Two of the World's Most Popular Literary Characters, by Derek Murphy. And of course, there's a lot of people who would say, well, Jesus isn't just a literary character. Well, he's taking it from the angle that there's a lot of controversy over the historicity of Jesus. Did he actually exist, even exist? Was he amplified by his followers after his death? All of those things. Those are the things that come back in. Good night, Brianna. She's got to get back to her homework. Thanks for being here. Hey, David Castle. Good to see you. And when looking at this, you have to look and find out how much mythology prior to the time of Jesus was built into furthering the story of Jesus. And so that's where we've been in this series, talking about these things. And one of the limitations of the focus on psychological undercurrents of universal mythology is that although popularizing the similarities between the various mythological elements and traditions, it also chains the subject into the fixed, limited historical period of that movement. So consequently, the rich field of comparative mythology research is unfortunately seen as dated or only relevant for psychology majors. And we come to a thing that we call the criteria of double dissimilarity. Let me explain what that is. While mythologists were busy exploring the similarities between Jesus Christ and world mythology and claiming that they were produced out of some universal human need or a shared consciousness or unconsciousness, biblical scholars continued the quest for the historical Jesus, but they shifted their focus a bit. And by the way, the reason we're going into the historical Jesus is to find out how Jesus could be a literary character and how one of the most celebrated other literary characters, Harry Potter, has become a Christ type in certain circles. So using this methodological tool that was first advocated by Bultmann, the criteria of double dissimilarity, or CDD it's called, scholars tried to identify this genuine historical founder behind the Christian movement by combing through the Bible for ideas that couldn't be traced either to Judaism or the early church. So they're looking for ancient mythology that could be the basis for creating the Christ, and I'm going to say myth or the mythos. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. And Bultmann says in his book, The History of the Synoptic Tradition, he says this: we can only count on possessing a genuine similitude of Jesus, where, on the one hand, expression is given to the contrast between Jewish morality and piety and the distinctive eschatological temper which characterized the preaching of Jesus. And where, on the other hand, we find no specifically Christian features. So they're saying you got to look at all these different features to try to figure this out. And it gets a little thick here. But Bultmann's CDD was reiterated and expanded by Ernst Kussmann and Norman Perrin, gaining the seal of approval among all the academics studying these things, and has since remained influential in academic research into the life of Jesus. Ernst Kussmann, what is the A? How is the A pronounced with the two dots, with the umlaut? Is that the umlaut, the two dots above it? Kussmann? I don't know how you pronounce that, but he said this: we can only sketch in a few bold strokes the embarrassment of critical research. It lies in this: while the historical credibility of the synoptic tradition, the synoptic means, it's like, you've heard the term the synoptic gospels. It means the four gospels that are in the New Testament. There's a synopsis. They all have this similar synopsis to it. So the historical credibility of the synoptic, or like each other traditions, has become doubtful all along the line. Yet at the same time, we're still short of one essential requisite for the identification of the authentic Jesus material, namely a conspectus of the very earliest stage of primitive Christian history. And also, there's almost complete lack of satisfactory and watertight criteria for this material. And as you remember, if any of you remember way back, almost a couple of years ago now, when we're talking about the Gnostic Christians and early Christianity and how so different it is from what became the literalist Orthodox Church, you'll know exactly what he's talking about there. There's no way to really trace it to this outstanding historical data. And so in only one case do we have more or less ground under our feet, when there are no grounds either for deriving a tradition from Judaism or for ascribing it to primitive Christianity. Thus, we reach this fundamental criterion for authority upon which all reconstructions of the teachings of Jesus must be built, which we purpose to call the criterion of dissimilarity. So, recognizing that it follows an attempt to write a history of the tradition concerned, we might formulate it as follows: the earliest form of a saying we can reach may be regarded as authentic if it can be shown to be dissimilar to characteristic emphasis both of ancient Judaism and of the early church. And this will particularly be the case where Christian tradition oriented toward Judaism, and how it can be shown to have modified the saying away from its original emphasis. So, although the CDD is a reasonable academic process, it has a few disadvantages. First of all, it's made possible by first completely ignoring the mythological and pagan elements in the Gospels. Why do you think we talked about Christo-paganism? There are mythological and pagan elements in the Gospels that you find in your New Testament. If you've got one on your shelf, that's what it's in there. Biblical scholars of the Bultmann variety unanimously conclude, I have no idea what that tone was on my phone and what it represents. So I have no idea what that was. So unanimously, they conclude that these are the later additions to the story, and can tell us nothing about the historical Jesus. So in other words, if Jesus was pagan, if all of those mythical elements were the core of him and he consisted of nothing else, he would not be historical, thus leading to a dead end in the research and the impossibility of knowing any more about him. Therefore, scholars focus on what Jesus, as a hypothesized historical figure, must have been, since many of the elements in the Bible came either from pre-Christian Jewish movements or post-Jesus Christian apologetics. Jesus, according to the CDD, is to be found somewhere between these two, in that wasteland, or that no man's land between these two things, between pre-Christian Jewish movements and post-Christian apologetic. Apologetic, again, of course, is adding to or I want to say manipulating, but not in a negative word, changing the story to match what the followers wanted everybody to know about him. So they're saying the truth has to be somewhere between the two of those. Hey, Roger Rabbit. Good to see you. Welcome to the show. A missing link, says Slightly Slanted Sleuth. Yeah, exactly. There's a missing link in there somewhere. And let's see, who else is going on there? Sorry you're having some problems with the feed, Matthew Sainsbury. I haven't seen anybody else say anything, so I'm thinking and at least hoping that it has to do with your situation down there, your internet down there. The ooh sound in goose, says Dave Potter. So that's what the umlaut is. Umlaut. Guy's name was Kunzman. So there you go. So now all of this has been this motivating reasoning that's behind the research into the historical Jesus for the last few decades. And it has to be noted, however, that with this type of research, the historical Jesus remains only an unproven theory. Yeah, the Gospels can be historical documents, but they're basically faith documents. So it's an unproven theory. Jesus, the historical figure, is the binding element that's given to any untraceable idea, phrase, philosophy, or theology from a specific time period. So based on the fact that the gospel accounts of Jesus Christ are almost completely filled with earlier Jewish ideology, pagan philosophy, or later Christian theology, which developed over time and hence can say little about a historical founder, the only way to talk about the historical Jesus intelligibly is to talk about the type of person he could have been. He was either Jesus the Jew, who became immediately transformed into something very different by his followers, or he was nothing at all. So remember, Jesus said, I'm not come to do away with the law, but to fulfill it, the Jewish law. And this trend is clearly shown by a few of the more popular titles that are published about Jesus in the last few decades. Jesus the Jew in 1973. Jesus in Judaism, 1985. The Historical Jesus, The Life of a Mediterranean Jewish Peasant in 1991. A Marginal Jew, Rethinking the Historical Jesus, came out in 2001. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, A Jewish Life and the Emergence of Christianity in 1999. In 2002, Thiessen and Winter published The Quest for the Plausible Jesus. Catch that? Is there a plausible Jesus? What does that mean to you? That there are researchers and theologians that are scholars trying to find the plausible Jesus, which uses a softer form of the CDD to envision who Jesus might have been. And the danger with this line of reasoning is that when we do a close examination of the Jewish sources, we find very little in the Gospels that can't be traced to earlier movements within Judaism. So we could theorize that Jesus was the person who put these pieces together and fueled them with passion. But it's also possible to remove the hypothesis of a historical Jesus without weakening an understanding of the historical developments around him. So consequently, when searching for the historical Jesus with academic rigor, it's possible to go too far and actually weaken the position that there was one at all. And so the problem was recognized in a 1963 article, almost as old as I am, 57 years ago, an article printed by Time magazine. And in this article, it says this: we can know nothing. During the 1920s, Bultmann sealed the doom of the old quest as far as Europe was concerned. He argued that the Gospels were interested not in presenting a dispassionate portrait of Jesus, but in expressing the kerygma, the proclamation of the early church's faith in a risen Christ. You catch that? They're saying the Gospels were not presenting a dispassionate portrait of Jesus at all. They were proclaiming the early church's faith in Jesus, the risen Jesus. So this meant that although the New Testament might be a primary source of study, sorry, I still have the one fly is just buzzing me constantly, bumping into my eyebrow, into my forehead, into my ears. Sorry. So the New Testament might be a primary source of study for the early church. It was only a secondary one for the life of Jesus, since the faith of later generations was really based on all the shining faith of the first Christians and not upon Jesus himself. Do you realize that? When you think about that, faith is based on his followers and their shining examples of faith. Peter, Paul, Timothy, all these characters, the disciples, the apostles. And the theologian should forget about seeking the earthly Jesus and analyze the formation of the kerygma. We can now know almost nothing, they say, concerning the life and personality of Jesus. Bultmann wrote in one of the shaping dicta of the modern theology, he said, and himself later moved a step further to the theological left and argued that to become credible for modern man, the kerygma must be demythologized, stripped of such unbelievable elements as its heaven above, hell below framework. But demythologizing, Robinson pointed out, threatened to end up with the conclusion that the Jesus of the kerygma could well be only a myth. So deprived of its link, the missing link, as Slanted Sleuth said, with the historical Jesus, Christianity might end up as some kind of existential philosophy, of which Christ was little more than a mythological symbol. What do you do with that? How do you process that? Hold on. Got him. Out of midair. It's like the old joke. The three samurais gathered, and they were going to show off their skills with their samurai swords, their katanas. And so they have three little bottles, and in each bottle is a fly. The first samurai is brought to the line, and they let the fly loose, and he unsheathes his sword, and sheathes his sword back in, and the fly drops into two pieces at his feet. And he bows. He's surely the greatest samurai. Second samurai comes up. They release his fly from the bottle. Shink! He takes out his sword. Fly falls into four pieces on the ground in front of him. Takes a bow. Surely this is the greatest samurai. How do you top four pieces? Third samurai comes up and they release his fly. Takes out his sword. Shink! Resheaths his sword, and the fly still buzzing around. And flies off. And they said, "Why, Master Samurai, you have not even touched the fly. You did not cut him into any pieces." And his response was, "Yes, but he is no longer able to reproduce." So, anyway, flies. I've killed one out of the air. I've killed fly flesh. Slightly Slanted Sleuth says here, he says, the cross atop every church is the symbolic representation of the glint of light produced in the moment of the ascension of Jesus. Maybe so. We were always taught that it was a symbol of the form of execution he faced. You can tell Scotty's an artist because he draws flies. I remember that reminds me of an old joke from my grandfather. He would say, go draw me a picture. And I'd say, I don't know what to draw a picture of. And he says, go draw some flies. And I didn't quite get it. And all the adults would laugh at that chuckle. Drawing flies. I didn't get it till later. Scott Allen, that's a great joke. Matthew Sansbury says, the samurai sword is made with dedication. I heard they're so sharp they can cut a person in two, or a fly in 4 pieces, or perform a vasectomy in a flying bug. So you're right, Matthew. So bifurcate. Thank you, Michelle. Yes. So moving on. The modern situation hasn't improved much on this whole thing with Jesus. In an article published by Christianity Today in 2010, so 10 years ago, 11 years ago, professor of religion at North Park University in Chicago, Scott McKnight, who has been immediately involved in the historical Jesus research for the past several decades, he describes how, after years of passionate research for the quest for the historical Jesus, it's again reached an impasse. So, illustrating this point in his classroom, he asked his students to take a test about what kind of person they think Jesus was. Was he outgoing? Was he shy, friendly, pensive, exciting, etc.? And when they take the same test only about themselves, then they take the same test only about themselves. And the results show that people picture Jesus to be just like they are. The same is true, McKnight concludes, of religious historians. McKnight quotes Dale Allison, one of America's top New Testament scholars, who confesses, professional historians are not bloodless templates passively registering the facts. We actively and imaginatively project. Our rationality cannot be extracted or extricated from our sentiments and feelings, our hopes and fears, our hunches, our ambitions. Maybe we have unthinkingly reduced the biography of Jesus to an autobiography. In other words, a biography of ourselves. The fragmentary and imperfect nature of the evidence, as well as the limitations of our historical abilities, should move us to confess, if we are conscientious, how hard is it to recover the past? We wield our criteria to get what we want. In other words, Jesus has become, for many historians, a reflection, a projection of who they are. Do you know how I have always viewed Jesus, the historical Jesus? I never saw him as the quiet, sullen, weak, frail Jesus that you see in a lot of movies, you saw in a lot of... I always saw Jesus, for me, he was a happy man. He was outgoing. He laughed with his disciples, I'm sure. I believe he loved. I believe he had a wife. I believe he was outgoing. I believe he was charismatic to draw people to him. Although some might say he drew people to him because he offered free healing. Maybe so. So, in other words, with virtually no evidence regarding the historical Jesus, the best historians can do is project their own interpretations of him. McKnight also admitted that the majority of the New Testament scholars are not Orthodox Christians. They may be believers, but theirs is a mature faith. Doesn't have to rely on the trappings of the church or the literal orthodoxy of a church, which doesn't accept the New Testament at face value. So while they maintain that Jesus was at least in part historical, they also accept that much of the New Testament is not historically accurate. And at the same time, as believers, they project into their research their own pre-existing theological affirmations. McKnight added, one has to wonder if the driving force behind the historical Jesus and the scholarship behind it is more than a priori disbelief in orthodoxy, than a historian's genuine and disinterested interest in what really happened. The theological conclusions of those who pursue the historical Jesus simply correlate too strongly with their own theological predilections to suggest otherwise. For the truth? Asks Slightly Slanted Sleuth. Yeah. Incidentally, we might be justified in asking whether historical New Testament scholars are really the experts on the historical Jesus at all. Wouldn't someone studying mythology, comparative religion, history or sociology or anthropology be better qualified to explain the motivations behind the Christian movement than someone who's seeking and inserting the Savior they need to find in order to justify their beliefs? Despite the article that we referred to earlier, the subtitle, Why Scholarly Attempts to Discover the Real Jesus Have Failed and Why That's a Good Thing, McKnight concludes without giving any indication of the benefits or the failure to discover the real Jesus. We can only guess that McKnight feels this creates a space for people to believe whatever they want. Believe what you want to believe, he's saying, without any proof or need to justification. If there's no proof it happened, there's also no proof that it did not happen. Comes the opposite argument. Believers argue that. And McKnight finishes his article with an unintentional demonstration of the way faith can cloud academic judgment. Faith clouds academic judgment. As an historian, I think I can prove that Jesus died and that he thought his death was atoning. I think I can establish that the tomb was empty and that resurrection is the best explanation for the empty tomb. But one thing the historical method cannot prove is that Jesus died for our sins and was raised for our justification and our atonement. You get that? We can probably prove historically that Jesus died. What you can't prove is the spirituality behind it. Did he actually die for our sins? And at some point, historical methods run out of steam and energy. And historical Jesus studies can't get us to the point where the Holy Spirit and the church can take us. So would an unbiased researcher conclude that the corpse of Jesus getting up, walking out of his grave, ascending into heaven is more rational than any other explanation, however improbable? So the main problem with the human Jewish Jesus at the center of modern research into biblical historicity is that nobody really believes in him. He's a necessary hypothesis in order to preserve the possibility of Christian faith. But he's nobody's hero or savior, only an historical premise to them. Moreover, in stripping away the mythological elements in the gospel, academics are also removing central concepts of Christian belief: the virgin birth, the miracles, the death, the resurrection of Jesus. In proving the historical Christ, they're also, albeit indirectly, disproving the Jesus of faith. There have been a few contemporary researchers who disagree with the trendy insistence on the historical Jesus. And these scholars are aware that the Jewish Jesus, while necessary to preserve the possibility of the historical Jesus of any kind, is very tenuously based on the Bible and the assumption that Jesus was real. And although he remains the focus of academic investigation, a very different hypothesis, which does not presume the historical Jesus, is also possible. And this hypothesis is often referred to as the Christ myth theory. We're going to go into that a little bit more tomorrow night. But I want to leave you with an historical apologetic about Jesus. I've talked about this before when we talked about Jesus. There are a lot of believers that gloss over the fact that when Jesus entered the precinct of Jerusalem on a Sunday, riding the foal of a donkey, and all the people are waving their palm fronds at him, yelling, "Hosanna to the King." We refer to it now as Palm Sunday. How you got the whole city turning out, looking to him as the King of Israel, the King of the Jews. And how is it that just a few days later, 4 or 5 days later, they all turn on him? Give us Barabbas, crucify Jesus. Why did that turn take place? Well, there is an historical explanation for that. And this is what the historian will do. Now, I'll do this without looking at any of the personality of Jesus or try to ascribe to him a passion that I might hold for him. But keep in mind, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem, the people were hearing that he was proclaiming he was the King of the Jews. What did they want more than anything? Deliverance from the bondage of Rome. And they saw Jesus as, is he the king? Is he the Messiah? Their understanding of Messiah was the one who would deliver them from bondage to Rome. So what did they do? They started waving the palm fronds. Hail to the King! Hosanna! They all cried. Did you know that in ancient Judea, in Jerusalem, at the time of Christ, the palm frond, we'll use this as our palm frond, the palm frond was the symbol of the Maccabean revolt and the Maccabean family, the symbol of Judas the Hammer, Judas Maccabee. And what had happened a little over a century earlier, Judas Maccabee, a Jew, had been part of the rebellion that ousted the Greeks from Jerusalem and the temple. And he did historically incorporate Rome's help to do that. And that's how Rome eventually ended up being a part of, making Judea one of its vassal states. But the symbol of the Maccabean family was the palm frond. And that palm frond was what they were waving when Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem on the foal of a donkey. Hosanna to the King. Waving the symbol of the Maccabean revolt. Why were they doing that? Because they believed Jesus was there to raise an army to rebel against Rome and oust the Romans and deliver them. He was the Messiah, the King of the Jews. But then over the next few days, he made it very clear. My kingdom isn't here on earth. My kingdom's in your heart. According to the story. The people were like, we don't need more philosophers. We need a king that's going to deliver us. This is why they turned on him a few days later. So they saw, here's our king being beaten, and he's being offered up to be crucified, and the governor's giving us a choice, Barabbas, this murderer, or Jesus. They chose Barabbas because they were pissed off that Jesus wasn't the king they thought he was going to be. He wasn't the palm frond king. So that's history. That's an historical look at what the palm frond was. Not necessarily an historical story that supports that Jesus ever existed. It's part of the Jesus story. But the palm frond meant a certain thing at that time in history. So there you go. Jerusalem was a powder keg, says Matt Finn, waiting to blow with social political tension. Ironically, much like today. Isn't that the truth? So go watch The Life of Brian when they're all debating what the name of their organization be. The Jewish Liberation Front. Whatever it was. And they come up with all these names. That's what it was like. The Hasmonean dynasty. You're right, Matthew Sainsbury. Of course, the Hasmoneans didn't rule. They ruled at the will of Rome. So, what's Matt Finn saying about the pineal gland? The pineal gland is more important to our connection than most understand. Some speculate those tests are inserted deeply in an effort to damage it. Not a personal truth to me, but I've heard. Okay. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. I'd have to look back in what you guys were talking about. Something about slightly slanted sleuth talks about the pine cone statue in the central courtyard of the Vatican. Is the eye in the triangle the pineal, Jesus, in the center of the 12 apostles, cranial nerves, i.e. the Last Supper painting? Maybe. I see what you were getting at, Matt Finn. So, third eye chakra, says Scott Allen. All right, folks, there you go. That's what tonight's show is about. We're going to pick it up tomorrow, kind of pick up where we left off again, Tuesday night. Now, be patient with me this week. I'm going to be moving all week. We ran into some difficulties getting internet over at the new place. We were being told today that it would take a month to get our new internet set up. Now, we didn't even know a month ago that we were moving. So now we're moving, and we put in that order. Well, I didn't put in the order. And there's, by the way, because we're in a small town, one of the 6 or 7 small towns in between New Richmond and Minneapolis, St. Paul. And they all, once you come over to Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin, all these city councils vote on who they're going to use for their internet. So we don't have any big companies. You go 15 miles from here over to Stillwater, Minnesota, and you can get any internet company you want. I think you can go to Hudson, where Rocky lived, about 15 minutes that way, north of us. You can get almost any internet company you want. But here, we've got 2 you can choose from here. Frontier being one of them, and a local one being the other one. Somerset, where we're moving back into Somerset, there's only one internet company. And we lived there before, and we had that company. I just didn't remember that was the only one that we could get there. So we did sign up for a satellite company. And at the same time, also signed up for a second satellite company, which would be SpaceX's Starlink. You can go look it up. This is Elon Musk's. It was supposed to be launched this month. And we still don't know if they can hook us up or not. It's $99 a month. And satellite through his satellites. We're with another satellite company. It's going to cost us $183 a month. So I'll cancel that one if Starlink comes through for us. But the new satellite, they're going to get us hooked up in about 2 or 3 days. So we will have seamless internet. But if you miss... If I miss this any time, hey, Slightly Slanted Sleuth, yes, I go to the Apple River all the time. We drive over it 5 times a day. And going back and forth from New Richmond to Somerset. My buddy Steve Kaufman owns the River's Edge there, which is an inner tubing place. And he and his brothers own the Cedar Lake Speedway, the dirt NASCAR track here. Just a few miles from here. And he owned Play It Again Toys when my daughters were very young. My older daughters were very young. And that's how I got to know him. And so I've known him for about 30 years. And so I do work for him. And so, yes, you've been to the Apple River many times. Fantastic. Yeah, we drive right by the river's edge every day. So along the highway there, Highway 64 to Somerset. So there you go. Hey, we got something in common there. Went to the Apple River when I was a kid, Sleuth. We went, there was a fly that just walked over the lens of my camera, if you saw that. No, it wasn't a ghost. But your grandma lives in New Richmond. We're in New Richmond right now. We've been in New Richmond for 3 years. And we're heading back over to Somerset this week to the new place. So, yeah, we're in New Richmond right now. Tell your grandma you know somebody who lives off of County Road A, easy to remember, right across from the turkey barns. That's always gives us a wonderful waft of scent in the middle of summer in the hot, humid weather that comes from the turkey barns. Imagine, you know what bird shit is like. You know what chicken shit is like. We'll take thousands upon thousands of turkeys in long barns, and they vent them out once a day. And it wafts up the hill, up the wind tunnel of the hill that's the opening to our development. You get the idea. So, yum. Makes you not want to eat turkey anymore. And Matt Finn's in Richmond Township. Of course, about 1,000 miles from here, 700 miles from here. So, I drive by you once a week to go to Grandma's. Fantastic. You know where the hospital is here? Slightly Slanted Sleuth. We're just 2 minutes from the hospital, up A. And up in one of the big stone-gated Willow Creek or something like that. We're going not Willow Creek, Meadow Creek or something. And that's where we are, at least for a few more days. And then we're back over to... I wish I'd known that. We could have gotten together. We still can. I will be in Somerset now. Just right off of Somerset, over by the schools. So you and I will talk. All right, guys. That's it. That's all we've got for tonight. That's the show. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for giving me your time. You don't know how much it means to me that you would give me your time and come in here and listen. If you're not a member of this channel, hit the join button, become a member. Helps me out. Doesn't do much for you. You get a couple of perks in there. The show is always free, but we got a $2, $5, $15 a month level that comes out of your card automatically. And those of you who are at those levels, I appreciate it. Helps us out. Helps cover our internet bill. We're going to have a steeper internet bill now. So there you go. And the offering plate's going to come around, and God will move you to put in that offering plate, whatever you do. But whatever you do, put something in. Put a bigger amount in, and God will bless you even more. Amen. Amen. Do I hear an amen? Glory! Sorry, that's not what I'm doing. So, all right, guys. Thanks for being here. You have a good night. And you know what? I'm going to see you tomorrow. So, should I live so long? Live long and prosper.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.